Because in every meeting that I go to, I hear a call for we need to have better exchange of learning and better exchanges of practices. And short of organizing more meetings, I think that we should be challenged to organize better the knowledge that is there, and particularly make sure that you tell us how you want it to be made available to you, so that you can use what you know is there, but you don't need to go into more workshops and seminars for now, at least. And maybe we can be more strategic about the knowledge that we do have. The learning from each other is extremely significant. I've come to realize how very practical that is. But I'm also saying that knowing that some of the challenges that we are facing in the years to come goes far beyond individual local learning. And the evolution of risk and the risk accumulation to countries shared assets. For me, the nuclear plant crisis in Japan just brings to my mind, well, what happens to all these hydroelectric dams, these huge constructs that sit between countries on shared rivers? How well have the safety of these things been thought through? And if something happens, who's responsible? One country which is in fact part of the ESCAP region is Tajikistan. You must have been in a meeting with Tajikistan where they talked to you about the Lake Saleh problem. Now, the reality is that no one is actually picking up on this. It's a huge challenge for Tajikistan. And tens of thousands of people are downstreams from this dam, and it is cracking up. But there is no one's individual responsibility. These are things that lie ahead of us now, and they are quite immediate. And they do have a direct impact about how we think about development. So development is not perhaps just what we think about in the traditional sense of supporting, stimulating economic growth in low-income countries, middle-income countries. It's also tackling the accumulated risks that many of the most sophisticated countries have built. And it's looking at, how can this definition of these issues in fact assist in solving many of the rapidly building up dilemmas now that are in very rapidly growing economies. And this is going on all the time. Some of you will have been familiar with, for example, the discussions about how to use the water in the River Nile in Africa. They just signed an agreement a very short time ago, which is good, but in itself the existence of that agreement now raises all these other problems about how to share the responsibility, what happens in the case of disasters, and familiar issues from many other shared watersheds in the world. At the same time, we have such a strong focus on urban areas, which is excellent, because that's where the risk accumulates the fastest. But we need rural hinterlands for all kinds of positive reasons, and also for production of agricultural goods that we consume, and also to have a stable social environment. I mentioned before that I don't think the economic argument is enough. Many of us have grown professionally in an era where the humanitarian argument was the driving force. We have to reduce the losses of lives. This has happened. You have done that everywhere in the world. This is one of the successes of the past 30, 40 years. We are now understanding the economic argument better and better, and we can actually show the cost benefit of many of the interventions. So we need to sharpen our argumentation. Many countries' officials have already brought forward another argument why disasters are very important to handle well and to prevent and mitigate, and that's social stability. And this is in an era, of course, where communications go beyond anything we could have dreamt about. So it's that sensitivity to if by all means, if a government, but also just the impact of disaster today destroys societies in a different way from what they used to do. The communities are in fact already so changed so that their resilience is lowered to rebuild after disasters. And finally, the argument that I would think today is going to be the leading argument for us to get the sensitivity and the action on disaster risk reduction to the forefront is the political argument. And I had this from a minister from this region who in a meeting said in a very large audience, he said, when disasters are among the worst things that can happen to a country. When they hit, and if people don't think that we as a government handle them well, as ministers we risk losing our jobs. And since this minister said that, I take the liberty of quoting him because I felt he was very courageous and insightful comment. I don't think this is happening very often, but I think that the awareness of the political impact of disasters is very significant. So instead of seeing it so negatively as that I will lose my job, I would like to use that as a positive reinforcement and say, because disaster risk reduction is not controversial. Everyone agrees this is a good thing to do, whether you have resources or not. So let's offer our political leaders, remember your priority number 1. Make disaster risk reduction a national priority and a political priority. So here's my thought that I'd like to share with you, and I hope I will be able to realize it together with you. If heads of states can meet on Millennium Development Goals, they can meet on education goals, they can meet on protecting water, etc. Surely we can envisage a summit for disaster risk reduction. Once we can formulate the objective and how political leadership can assist us to do what? To forge action internationally in order to support national achievements. I don't think that's very far away. And I think the Secretary General of the United Nations is ready to take the lead with some of the leadership of this region and a few other regions. And that we will have the nucleus for moving forward. And then I think we'll be able to package what needs to be achieved most critically in a time period that is achievable for a political leader. So that's what I wanted to suggest, that we need to engage in our thinking. And just to conclude in terms of the 25 years of hard work of ADPC, you've certainly contributed to make this possible. Everything that you do in this forum and in all the other mechanisms that exist, particularly in Asia, but also in, of course, the rest of the world. That strong conviction and that determination of a very precise practice for how to reduce risk is what is going to also assist our leadership to make it that core objective of the work that we need to have. So the 2020 goal can then, for all of us, be even more precise, but I think we will come back to that. So thank you for your attention.